The final declaration. The galaxy had lived in peace for centuries, with empires rising and falling like waves on an endless ocean. But there were whispers of something different, something terrifying, something that no one in the galaxy had ever expected. Humanity was gone. At least, that's what everyone had believed. Earth had been destroyed years ago. The Terran fleets had been decimated in a final battle, and humanity's legacy seemed to fade into the dust of history. The stars, once filled with the hum of human ships and the bright lights of their cities, were now silent. But deep within the ruins of Earth, something had been hidden, a secret that would change everything. Humanity, in its final hours, had left a message, and that message was about to echo through the galaxy, sending ripples of fear across the stars. The message came from the heart of Earth's last stronghold, where a handful of human survivors had fought to protect what was left of their world. Their final message was simple, but it carried a weight far greater than anything the galaxy could comprehend. We are not gone. We will not be forgotten. And if you threaten us, you will regret it. It was just a few words, words that, in the grand scheme of things, seemed meaningless. But as they traveled across the galaxy, they sent a shockwave that could be felt from the most distant corners of space. The message wasn't just a cry of defiance. It was a declaration that humanity was not finished, and that whoever had thought them weak would soon learn just how wrong they were. The message was intercepted by every major galactic empire. The Zinthar, the Asha, the Grath, the Vork. They all heard the same chilling words, and for the first time in centuries, fear spread across the galaxy. They had forgotten humanity, thinking them nothing more than a brief flash in the history of the stars. Now, they realized their mistake. In the great council halls of the Zinthar Empire, the leaders sat in stunned silence as the message played again. Their war council, usually filled with bold decisions, and the sound of confident voices, now felt cold. The High Commander, Varnak, stood frozen, staring at the hologram of the message. His usual arrogance had disappeared, replaced by a quiet dread. Impossible, Varnak muttered under his breath. He had heard the stories, the rumors that humanity had something powerful hidden away, but he had dismissed them as mere legends. The humans had been destroyed after all. There was no way they could still pose a threat. But now, with this message, his certainty was shaken. We need to prepare. They are not gone. Across the galaxy, the message sparked similar reactions. The Grath, a fierce warrior race that had conquered dozens of planets, gathered in their war rooms. Their general, Kroth, slammed his fist on the table as he listened to the message. The Asha, known for their cold, calculating nature, analyzed the message with a calm that hid their unease. Even the Vork, who had long believed themselves to be the dominant force in the galaxy, felt a sense of vulnerability. But while the empires of the galaxy were filled with unease, the humans themselves were preparing for something far more than just a threat. They were preparing for the battle that would reshape the galaxy. General Ashford, the commander of the Terran fleet, stood in front of the holographic map of the galaxy. His fingers traced the vast distances between the Earth and the farthest reaches of the stars. But distance was no longer a concern. Humanity had learned to adapt, to survive. And now, they had learned how to strike when no one expected it. The fleet had been reformed, its ships built not only for war, but for endurance. They had taken the best technology from the remnants of the old Earth and mixed it with new dangerous innovations that no one had seen before. They were ready to send a message of their own. "We will not back down," General Ashford said, his voice firm. "We will show them the cost of underestimating humanity." The final declaration was not just a warning. It was the beginning of humanity's retaliation. The fleets were ready. The weapons were prepared. And the galaxy was about to learn what it truly meant to cross a Deathworlder. As the message continued to spread, it sparked not only fear, but curiosity. The leaders of the galaxy now knew that the humans, though small in number, had something far more dangerous than a fleet of warships. They had something that the galaxy had never faced before: pure, unrelenting resolve. And that resolve was about to be tested. The final words of humanity's message had reached the farthest corners of space. They had been heard, but they had only just begun. The galaxy would soon learn what it meant to provoke the last of humanity, and the terror that followed would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The stage was set. The message had been sent. And now, the galaxy would wait to see if the humans would keep their word, or if the final cry of humanity would fade into nothingness. But deep in the heart of Earth, one thing was certain: humanity had no intention of fading away. They were ready to fight for their survival, and the stars would be their battleground. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The final message from humanity continued to ripple across the stars, sparking a wave of terror that could not be ignored. Across the empires, from the cold halls of the Vorth to the lavish chambers of the Zinthar, leaders gathered in urgent meetings, their minds racing with one single question: what did this mean for the future? For generations, the galaxy had been divided into a fragile peace, a peace that had taken centuries to build. Wars had been fought, alliances had been forged and broken, and yet humanity had remained a distant memory, their fleets destroyed, their planet burned. The galaxy had moved on, as galaxies do. They had forgotten the Terran people, dismissed them as weak, as nothing more than a flash of ambition that had been snuffed out. But now, the message had awakened something deep within them, a fear they had not expected, a fear they could not explain. The Zinthar High Command was the first to act. The Zinthar were known for their advanced technology and ruthless tactics, but even they felt a cold shiver run through their ranks. The Zinthar Empire, vast and powerful, had prided itself on its domination, its belief that they were the unquestioned rulers of the galaxy. But the words in that message challenged everything they thought they knew. The humans are not gone. And if they are returning, we must be ready. Commander Varnak, the High Commander of the Zinthar military, stood before the War Council, his hands resting on the cold metal table. His mind raced. The Zinthar had never feared anyone, except, perhaps, their own shadows. But the words that echoed through the stars were unsettling. They were a threat, yes, but they also carried an unmistakable confidence, a confidence that could only come from a species that had endured something unimaginable. "We will not be caught off guard," Varnak declared, his voice low but powerful. "Prepare our fleets. We will show these humans that they are not a threat." But even as Varnak spoke, doubts lingered. No one truly knew the extent of humanity's capabilities. No one knew what weapons or tactics they had developed in the years since their supposed extinction. All they knew was that the message had been sent, and it carried a weight that threatened to crush their sense of security. The Asha, a race known for their cold logic and calculating minds, were equally unsettled. They had observed the Terran Wars, the last battles fought by humanity, and they had assumed the species had been wiped out. But now, their cold, calculating minds were faced with an uncertainty they could not analyze. "You can't destroy what you can't understand," Queen Erlin, the Asha monarch, said quietly as she paced the room. Her voice, though soft, held a tone of deadly intent. "And this message is something we can't understand." Her advisors were silent, each one struggling to grasp the enormity of the situation. The Asha had always been prepared for war, but they had never prepared for a war with an unknown enemy, an enemy that was capable of surviving even the harshest of conditions. The message continued to spread, each transmission sending a ripple of fear and confusion. But it wasn't just the military minds that were worried. Across the galaxy, the general population began to talk, whispers of humanity's return spreading like wildfire. The public had been told for generations that humanity was a myth, a mere fable created to inspire fear. Yet now, with the message echoing in every corner of the galaxy, doubt began to take root. The Vorth, a war-hungry species who had spent their existence conquering worlds, had never feared anything until now. General Kroth, the Vorth leader, stood in front of a massive holographic map of the galaxy, his mind working feverishly. "They dare challenge us," Croth growled, his voice filled with disbelief. "They were wiped out, slaughtered, and now they send a message across the stars." Croth's claws gripped the sides of the map, his body trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. The Vorkth were fierce warriors, but they had never faced an enemy that wasn't a clear, tangible threat. Humanity's message was more than a mere declaration of war. It was a challenge to everything they believed in. "We must respond," Croth ordered. "We will find them, and we will show them the price of defying the Vorkth." But even as the Vorkth prepared to retaliate, a shadow of doubt began to fall over them. The galaxy was big, and humanity's final message was just the beginning. No one could predict where the humans were, or what they were capable of. That uncertainty gnawed at the minds of the Vorkth as they rallied their forces, preparing for a battle that none of them truly understood. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Ashford watched as the message had taken root across the galaxy. The Terran fleet, once scattered and weakened, had now been reformed into something new, something far more dangerous. Humanity had learned how to survive. They had learned how to adapt. And now, they were ready to show the galaxy just how wrong they had been about them. General Ashford stood in the command center of the Terran fleet, a calm determination in his eyes. "It's time," he said quietly to his officers. "The galaxy will learn the price of underestimating humanity. The last cry has been heard, and now it's our turn to speak." With a single command, the Terran ships activated their engines, their sleek forms cutting through the void of space. The fleet was small, but it was mighty, and as it moved toward the heart of the galaxy, the fear that had begun to take root across the stars grew stronger. Humanity was coming, and this time, they weren't asking for forgiveness. They were coming for justice. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The echo of fear had begun, and the stars would tremble in its wake. Across the galaxy, the message sent by humanity continued to reverberate, becoming an unstoppable wave of fear and uncertainty. As the different empires scrambled to understand the meaning behind the final cry, they found themselves facing the undeniable truth. Humanity was not just a myth, and they were not as weak as they had believed. The very fabric of the galaxy was beginning to tear under the pressure of this unknown terror. The Terran fleet, once fractured and scattered, now sailed through space with an unmatched purpose. Their course was set toward the heart of the galaxy. It wasn't just a retaliation, but a declaration of something far greater. Humanity was coming for more than just revenge. They were coming to reshape the galaxy, to remind the stars that they had been wrong to forget them. In the cold void of space, a meeting of the minds was taking place, one that would determine the future of the galaxy. The Zinthar, the Asha, the Vorkth, all of them were preparing for the inevitable conflict, but none knew what to expect. The power of the Terran message, now confirmed as more than a threat, weighed heavily on their minds. None had anticipated this outcome. The Zinthar High Command convened in a darkened room, a room that was filled with an oppressive silence. Commander Varnak stood at the head of the council, his gaze fixed on the screen displaying the Terran fleet's path. He had never been a believer in superstition, but the message humanity had sent shook him to his core. "We know they are coming," Varnak spoke, his voice low and controlled. "We know they are not alone. The galaxy may be vast, but it is small compared to the power they hinted at. We've seen the records. We know the history of Earth. They are survivors, and they are relentless. The question is no longer if they will strike, but when." Across the table, the other commanders nodded grimly, their faces a mixture of anger and fear. The Zinthar Empire had long prided itself on its military superiority, yet even they were beginning to wonder if they could face this new threat. They had never fought an enemy like humanity before, one that survived, no matter the odds, one that adapted, no matter how strong the enemy was. "We need a plan," Varnak continued. "We cannot afford to underestimate them. Prepare our fleets. We will meet them head-on, and we will show the galaxy that the Zinthar are not afraid. But the fear in the room was palpable. The Zinthar had made a mistake. They had assumed the humans were gone, and now they had to face the consequences of that assumption. Varnek's words may have been commanding, but in his heart, he knew something was amiss. Humanity was not just a military threat. There was something deeper, something older, at play here. Elsewhere, in the heart of the Asha Empire, Queen Erland sat in a chamber lined with holographic maps of the galaxy. The Asha were the galaxy's most logical species, their minds sharp and precise, but even they could not grasp the full meaning of the Terran message. "I fear we have miscalculated," Erland said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "We dismissed them for too long. Now their final words are echoing in the galaxy. It is not a message of submission, but one of power. They are preparing for something." Her advisors sat still, their eyes trained on the hologram of the Terran fleet's course. They had thought they understood humanity. Simple creatures, nothing more than a brief moment of terror in the galaxy's history. They had underestimated them. Now, they feared they might pay the price for it. "We will move forward with caution," Queen Erland declared. "The Asha will not make the same mistake twice. We must prepare for whatever comes next. But remember this, we do not fight blindly. We fight with reason, with knowledge." The galaxy's greatest minds were divided, each trying to grasp the weight of what was coming. But as the Terran fleet continued its journey, their message had already changed the course of history. The galaxy had once been peaceful, but now it was a powder keg, ready to explode at the slightest spark. The Vorkth, too, were preparing for the impending clash. General Croth stood before a massive war council, his blood-red eyes scanning the faces of his officers. The Vorkth had built their empire on the foundation of violence and dominance. They had fought countless battles, defeated the strongest of enemies, and never once backed down from a fight. But this was different. This was something they had never encountered before. Humanity was not just a threat. They were an enigma. "We must strike first," Croft growled, his claws clenched in fury. "We cannot allow them to strike before we do. We will show them that the Vorkth are not afraid. We will wipe them from the stars." His officers saluted, their expressions hard as stone. They were eager for battle, eager to prove their strength. But even Croft could not shake the doubt that gnawed at his mind. What if humanity was more than just a threat? What if their return signified something far darker? While the empires prepared, the Terran fleet moved ever closer to the heart of the galaxy. Their final cry had been heard, and it was only a matter of time before the galaxy felt the full force of humanity's rage. But as they drew nearer, there was something in the air, a sense of unease that no one could explain. The message had been clear. Humanity was no longer a myth. They had returned. And this time, they were not asking for mercy. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The storm was gathering, and soon it would break. The galaxy held its breath as the Terran fleet continued its relentless advance. The stars above seemed to flicker in nervous anticipation, as if even the cosmos itself was aware that something monumental was about to unfold. Fear had begun to spread like wildfire across every empire. From the mighty Zinthar to the calculating Asha, no one was certain what would happen next, but all knew one thing: humanity was coming, and their arrival would change everything. In the heart of the galaxy, the high command of the Zinthar Empire gathered in a dark, cold war room. Commander Varnek stood at the head of the table, his gaze unblinking as the holographic projections of the Terran fleet flickered before him. The once confident Zinthar commanders were now exchanging uneasy glances. The fleet had grown larger, more organized, and the weapons they had seen humanity deploy were like nothing they had ever encountered. "We underestimated them," Varnek muttered, almost to himself. The words were harsh, but they needed to be said. "We believed their final message was just a bluff, a last cry of a species that had been wiped from the stars. We were wrong." The hologram flickered again, showing a close-up of the Terran fleet, massive warships, some bearing scars of old battles, others pristine and ready for the conflict that awaited them. Their speed and efficiency were unmatched, and there was no doubt now that humanity was not just an emerging power. They were a force that could reshape the entire galaxy. "We cannot sit idle," Varnak continued, louder now, his voice commanding. "We must act. The galaxy will tremble at the sound of humanity's fleet, but we will make sure it is their blood that is spilled, not ours." But despite the bravado in his voice, Varnak knew the truth. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. There was a fear in his heart that he could not shake, a sense of dread that gnawed at him. He had seen the records, heard the stories of Earth's resilience and its unyielding will to survive. The Zinthar had fought countless battles, but humanity's return was not a battle to win. It was a reckoning. Across the galaxy, Queen Erlin of the Asha Empire stared out from her palace at the stars. Her advisors had spent countless hours analyzing the Terran fleet's movements, but no one could predict their true intentions. Humanity was no longer a simple species to be dismissed. They were powerful, cunning, and above all, unpredictable. "We have underestimated them for too long," Erlin said coldly, her voice filled with resolve. "The Asha were the smartest, the most calculating, but we were blind to the one thing we couldn't measure: humanity's spirit, their persistence. We must change our approach. There is no longer room for diplomacy. We must prepare for war." Her advisors nodded in agreement, but there was a shadow of doubt in their eyes. The Asha had been the dominant force in the galaxy for centuries. They had conquered, negotiated, and outsmarted their rivals. But the Terran message had shattered their confidence. If humanity had truly survived, then the galaxy was in for something it had never seen before. And then, in the far reaches of the galaxy, General Kroth of the Vorth stood before his war council, his crimson eyes burning with the fury of 1,000 battles. The Vorth were brutal, merciless, and they thrived on war. They had wiped out entire species in the past, and they had never feared an enemy. But humanity was different. They had never faced anything like the humans before. "The time for hesitation is over," Kroth growled, his voice low and menacing. "We will meet them head-on. Let them come. We'll show them that the Vorth are not afraid." His generals saluted, eager for the chance to prove themselves. But even they could feel the unease that was spreading among them. They had seen the power of humanity's warships, the strength of their will. The Vorth had always relied on overwhelming force, but humanity didn't bend. They didn't break. If anything, they grew stronger in the face of adversity. Kroth's gaze darkened. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We leave at dawn. We meet humanity's wrath with our own." Back aboard the Terran fleet, Admiral Elias Kane watched the stars pass by, his mind focused on the mission ahead. He knew the message humanity had sent out had shaken the galaxy, but there was something else he knew. Humanity's survival was no accident. It was a consequence of their spirit, their refusal to give up no matter the odds. Kane stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, the Vindication, his eyes scanning the endless expanse of space ahead. He knew what awaited them. The empires were preparing for war, but humanity wasn't just out for revenge. They had something far more significant in mind: to remind the galaxy of the power of Earth, of the strength of humanity's will to survive. "Admiral," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Captain Tessa Ford, his trusted second in command. "We've intercepted more messages from the other empires. They're mobilizing their forces. The Zinthar are preparing for battle. The Asha are aligning their fleets. The Vorth are gearing up for a fight." Kane smiled, a grim smile. "Let them prepare. We've heard their threats. Now they'll hear ours. The galaxy will understand what it means when humanity makes its stand. It won't just be a battle. It will be a message they'll never forget." The Terran fleet continued its journey, each warship a testament to humanity's power and resilience. But behind the cold, calculated movements of the fleet, something far more potent was growing. It was the belief that humanity could face anything, and that belief was about to shake the foundations of the galaxy. As the fleets moved toward the heart of the galaxy itself trembled in anticipation. The storm that was coming was unlike anything the stars had seen before. The galaxy was about to be reminded that humanity was no longer a forgotten legend. It was a force to be reckoned with, and when the Terran fleet reached its destination, nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy's once confident leaders were now united by a shared, chilling realization. Humanity's return was not just a political event, it was a reckoning. The power, the determination, and the sheer unpredictability of Earth's people had ignited a firestorm across the stars. One by one, the mighty empires prepared their defenses, yet no one truly knew what they were facing. The Terran fleet was unlike anything they had encountered before. Admiral Elias Kane stood at the front of the command center aboard the Vindication, his sharp eyes scanning the stars. His heart raced with anticipation. Humanity had been written off, considered a dying species, a faint memory in the cosmic ledger of time. Now, with every fleet they had assembled, with every ship moving in sync, humanity was not just surviving. They were striking back. "Admiral," Captain Ford's voice cut through the tense silence. "We've picked up a massive fleet on the outskirts of the Zinthar-controlled space. They're preparing to engage us. It's their entire defensive armada." Kane's eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer to the holographic projection, watching as the fleet of the Zinthar Empire slowly came into focus. The ships were massive, sleek, and deadly, everything one would expect from a race known for its technological superiority and ruthless tactics. Yet, as he examined their formation, a feeling gnawed at him. The Zinthar fleet appeared too confident, almost overconfident, and Kane knew this was their weakness. "Initiate Phase 1, Kane commanded. "Let them think they have the upper hand. We'll show them what humanity is capable of." The command was clear, and the fleet responded with swift precision. The Terran warships split into formations, each one moving in tandem as they adjusted their positions to face the incoming Zinthar armada. There was a cold resolve in the air, a calm before the storm. Each soldier aboard the Terran vessels knew what was at stake. This was not just a battle for survival. This was a message to the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the heart of Zinthar space, Commander Varnak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Razor's Edge. His hands were steady on the controls, but inside, his heart thudded against his chest. The Terran fleet was approaching, and every sensor told him that they were ready for war. "We've waited for this moment," Varnak muttered to himself, watching as the Terran fleet grew closer on the display. "Let them come." But Varnak could not shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. He had seen the signs, the stories of humanity's relentless survival. The Zinthar had been the dominant force for centuries, yet there was something different about this Terran fleet, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. "Commander, the Terran fleet has broken formation," one of his officers reported, his voice trembling. "They're scattering. It's an unorthodox strategy." Varnak's brow furrowed. "What are they trying to do? Break us apart?" But before he could make sense of it, a sudden jolt shook the Zinthar ship. A massive blast rocked the Razor's Edge, and the lights flickered ominously. The Zinthar officers scrambled to their stations, alarms blaring as the ship's hull buckled under the force of the attack. "We've been hit," shouted one of the officers. "Shields are down. All systems are failing." Varnak's mind raced. The Terran fleet was far more strategic than he had imagined. It was clear they were not engaging in traditional space warfare. They were exploiting the Zinthar's overconfidence. The scattered formation had been a deliberate trick. The Terran fleet had drawn the Zinthar in, luring them into a trap where their firepower was useless. "All units, engage," Varnak roared, trying to regain control of the situation. "We cannot let them break us." But it was too late. The Terran ships were faster, their weapons more advanced, and their tactics far more unpredictable. Every shot fired from the Terran fleet was calculated to disable, not destroy. until the Zinthar were weak enough to face the final blow. The Terran tactics were like a storm, relentless and unyielding. Back aboard the Vindication, Admiral Kane's eyes never wavered from the battlefield. His crew moved with mechanical precision, every officer knowing their role in this carefully executed plan. The Zinthar were a formidable enemy, but they had underestimated humanity's ingenuity. They thought they could crush humanity's last remnants, but now they were the ones on the defensive. Phase 2, Kane barked, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. Lock all weapons. Prepare for the final strike. The fleet responded instantly, the Terran warships closing in on the Zinthar ships, their weapons primed. The lights aboard the flagship dimmed as the countdown began. Kane's hands gripped the railing as he watched the Zinthar struggle to recover. Their shields had failed. Their weapons were ineffective. The end was near, and the Terran fleet was closing in for the kill. "Prepare to fire on my command," Kane ordered. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with determination. This is not just a battle. This is humanity's answer to the galaxy. Let them hear it. On his signal, the Terran fleet unleashed hell. A torrent of firepower erupted from the ships, tearing through the Zinthar defenses like paper. The once proud empire, known for its technological superiority and ruthless military tactics, was now nothing more than a broken force, crumbling under the might of humanity's wrath. The Zinthar's fleet disintegrated under the onslaught. The first strike had been a resounding success. The galaxy would soon know the truth of humanity's power. They had come not just to survive, but to dominate. The fear that had spread across the galaxy was only the beginning. As the remnants of the Zinthar fleet fled into the darkness, the Terran fleet pressed forward, a message ringing loud and clear in the void. Humanity was no longer a forgotten legend. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they had just begun. The aftermath of the first strike had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For eons, the mighty Zinthar Empire had been the epitome of power and control. Yet it was in their arrogance, their assumption that no one could challenge their rule, that they had sealed their fate. Humanity's response to their aggression had been swift and merciless. And now, the galaxy watched with bated breath. The once confident empires of the galaxy, scattered across the stars, now turned their gaze towards the events unfolding. The Zinthar had been defeated, and humanity had emerged victorious. But the true weight of this victory was not fully understood. It wasn't just about the destruction of a single fleet or the fall of an empire. It was about the message sent. Humanity was no longer a quiet, fading species hidden on a distant planet. They were a force with the ability to reshape the galaxy. News of the Terran fleet's devastating victory spread like wildfire across the stars. Every species, every empire that had once considered Earth's people weak and insignificant, now had to reconsider their position. Humanity's final cry had not only echoed across the cosmos, it had struck fear into the very hearts of those who believed themselves invincible. Back aboard the Vindication, Admiral Kane stood before the vast holographic map of the galaxy, his eyes tracing the paths of the fleets they had defeated, the ripple effects of their victory. He could sense the fear in the air, and yet it wasn't a fear of weakness. It was a fear of the unknown. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long, and now they were paying the price. "Admiral," Captain Ford spoke up, her voice steady but with an edge of urgency. "We've received reports from several systems. The other galactic powers are mobilizing. They know what we've done, and they're not taking any chances. We're being watched." Kane nodded. "They should be. They know what's coming next. We didn't just take down the Zinthar. We sent a message. The galaxy can't ignore us anymore." A deep silence hung over the command center. The officers aboard the Vindication could feel it. The tension was palpable. The galaxy was on the brink of something immense, something humanity had unknowingly triggered. The Terran fleet had struck the first blow, but the battle was far from over. Other empires, other forces, were now preparing for a war they hadn't expected. Suddenly, a new signal flashed on the command center screen. It was from the Trios Collective, a race of hive-minded beings who were known for their deep knowledge of the stars. They were not a military power like the Zinthar, but their vast intelligence network had always kept them safe from the chaos of galactic warfare. Their message was simple and direct. Humanity has declared war on the galaxy. Prepare accordingly. Kane read the message in silence. The Trios Collective had always been neutral in galactic conflicts. For them to make such a bold statement meant something had shifted, something fundamental had changed. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the predator. It begins, Kane muttered under his breath. The galaxy is waking up to the storm we've unleashed. The room fell into an eerie quiet as everyone processed the gravity of Kane's words. Humanity's actions had set the galaxy on a course it could not reverse. But there was no turning back now. The Terran fleet had tasted victory, and the galaxy was about to feel the full force of that. As the Terran fleet prepared for its next move, Kane's thoughts turned inward. He knew what was coming. The galaxy was no longer just a map of stars. It was a battlefield, and humanity was at the center of it. The first strike had been brutal and decisive, but it was only the beginning. In the distance, more fleets were gathering. More empires were aligning. But what they didn't realize was that they were already too late. The Terran fleet, now fully united, was a well-oiled machine, more than just a fighting force. They were a living testament to humanity's resolve, its unwillingness to be crushed, to be forgotten. Kane turned back to the holographic map, his eyes narrowing. There were more empires to conquer, more fleets to destroy. But the message was clear. Humanity would not be erased. The galaxy would know them. Fear them. Respect them. We're not just fighting for survival anymore, Kane said, his voice low, his resolve hardening. We're fighting for our place in this galaxy, and it's time the galaxy understood exactly what humanity is capable of. With that, the order was given. The next phase of the Terran fleet's campaign had begun. The galaxy had heard humanity's final cry, and now it would tremble in fear. As the first wave of ships moved toward their next target, a strange, quiet certainty settled over the command center. Humanity had sent its message. The storm was coming, and there would be no escape from it. The galaxy trembled. Humanity's actions had set in motion a chain of events that none could have predicted. The first strikes had been brutal, devastating, and swift. But what followed was something no one had expected. An all-out war, an unrelenting storm that swept across every corner of the galaxy, reshaping everything in its wake. No longer could the mighty empires and vast alliances ignore Earth and its Terran fleet. The once proud leaders who had scoffed at humanity were now forced to reckon with the consequences of their arrogance. Back aboard the Vindication, Admiral Kane stared out into the void of space, his mind racing. The fleet had grown stronger, more coordinated with each battle, and with every victory, humanity's influence spread further across the stars. The Zinthar were only the beginning. The rest of the galaxy had been put on notice. They had seen the raw power humanity wielded, and now they feared it. The galaxy was waking up to a new era, one where humanity would not be a mere footnote in the annals of history. Reports from every front came in, each one more chilling than the last. The once complacent empires were finally making their move, forming uneasy alliances. But it was too late. Humanity had already set the stage for the final act, and no force, no alliance, could stop it. Captain Ford entered the command center, her expression grim. Admiral, the Trios Collective has sent another message. They've called for a galactic summit. They want to discuss peace, but the tone, it's different this time. They're afraid. Kane's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no joy in it. The Trios Collective had always been a neutral party, a race of intellectuals who studied the stars and avoided conflict at all costs. For them to be afraid, truly afraid, was a powerful testament to how far humanity had come. Afraid of what they don't understand, Kane muttered. They think they can talk their way out of this. They think they can bargain with us. But they forget one thing. This war isn't about diplomacy. It's about survival. And humanity is done being the galaxy's punching bag. The message from the Trios Collective had been clear. They were willing to negotiate, but only on their terms. They still believed they could control the narrative. But humanity had learned that there was no room for negotiation when your enemies thought they could erase you from existence. The galaxy had underestimated Earth once, and now they were paying the price. As the fleet made its way toward the next target, Kane felt the weight of the choices ahead. Each victory came with its own cost. The galaxy was in chaos, and humanity's influence was growing. But there was a line, one that Kane knew they couldn't cross. Humanity had to be careful. Their cry had been heard across the stars, but it wasn't just fear they had inspired. It was a new kind of hatred. The galaxy would not forget this, and neither would they forgive. The first real test of humanity's power was now upon them. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of peace and unity, had fractured. Alliances were being broken, old enemies were becoming new allies, and the entire galaxy was shifting in response to humanity's last cry. "Admiral," Lieutenant Voss called from his station. "We've intercepted a transmission from the Synthor's last remaining fleet. They've joined forces with the Dark Dominion. They say they will end humanity's reign. But this time, they've made a mistake. They've underestimated us. Again." Kane clenched his fists. "Prepare for battle," he said coldly. "We'll show them what happens when they continue to test humanity. The galaxy needs to understand. We're not backing down." The final confrontation was approaching. The forces of the Synthar and the Dark Dominion were formidable, but they were no match for the unity of the Terran fleet. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment, learning, adapting, and building strength from the most unlikely of sources. The galaxy had no idea what they were about to face. As the ships gathered in the darkness of space, the tension in the air was almost unbearable. Every officer aboard the Vindication felt it. The sense that this battle would determine the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Victory was not just about survival. It was about establishing their place among the stars. "Admiral," Captain Ford said, her voice steady. "It's time. The enemy is waiting." Kane nodded, his expression hardening. "Then let's show them the true power of humanity." The final battle began with a single, piercing command. "Engage." The Terran fleet, with all its might, surged forward, cutting through the void like a blade through flesh. The Synthar and the Dark Dominion stood no chance. Humanity had evolved beyond mere survival. It was now fighting for its future, its legacy, and its place in the cosmos. As the battle raged on, the message was clear. Humanity's last cry had been heard across the galaxy, and now, with each passing moment, it was being followed by the roar of victory. The galaxy would never forget the terror humanity had unleashed, and they would never forget the lesson that had been learned too late. Never, ever underestimate Earth. The final reckoning had begun, and the galaxy would tremble before humanity's might.